Every day at this time, it's Football at 4. John McMullen covers the Eagles, the NFL. He does it all right here on 97.3 ESPN. Happy deadline day, John.
Happy deadline day. I see you're optimistic on Twitter.
Yes, I woke up in a very good mood today, John.
NBA Finals. Is that it? Did I hear that correctly?
NBA Finals. They will win the East.
Wow.
Yep.
That's bold.
He didn't specify what
bold.
year.
Well,
I'm not prepared to go as boldly as you are.
I will say this, John. I know if they don't make it, people will remember. But if they do make it, no one's going to say, man, that was, you stuck with them through this whole thing. That never happened.
Oh, I feel you there.
Yeah.
I don't get any credit for all the things I get right.
Nope.
Starting with Doug Peterson, but I get a lot of you-know-what for the things I get wrong.
Yeah, well, the Doug Peterson stuff, this whole coaching thing. So they're done. Is this a completed staff now? They're done? Is this what we're going with now?
I would think so.
Is this Aaron Moorhead? Is that official?
Oh, well, nothing's official. The Eagles are going to announce all the moves at once, but, yeah, he's going to be the wide receivers coach. And fifth in 5 years for Doug. So some of that has been an issue with that particular position and development of guys. I think that's fair to say. So hopefully this is a guy who played in the league, maybe brings a little bit more cachet than, say, Carson Walsh. But we said the same thing about Phillip Daniels last year on the defensive line, and he was a one-and-done guy. So you never know how these things work out.
There were some interesting, Marinelli just got hired to coach defensive line. Also, Buckner just got hired to coach defensive line. So there were some intriguing names there. Who the Eagles ended up with, Matt Burke, right? He was a coordinator as well.
Yeah, he's going to be the defensive line coach. He was a former coordinator with the Dolphins. And he has a very good relationship with Jim Schwartz, worked for him before. Very close to him, so Jim is very comfortable. I don't think anyone looks at this staff and is worried as much about the defensive side of the ball, even though you also have a new secondary coach, and that'll be Marquand Manuel, who's also a former coordinator. So I think there's more questions on the offensive side of the ball than the defensive side of the ball.
All right. What about the new trend in the league? Being a coordinator is out, man. The Titans are going to go without a official defensive coordinator. We know that the 49ers don't have an offensive coordinator. Now the Eagles don't have one. The Browns are going without an offensive coordinator. What is what's the thinking behind this? What is because there's got to be something that we're not going to have a coordinator. Is it to save money? Is it to not put guys out to speak? What is this trend?
I think it's sort of a corporate thing, and everybody wants to be seen as innovative and new and forward thinking. The Eagles are very cognizant of their reputation in that regard, and they like it when when people think they're innovative and think they're forward thinking. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. And I've talked about it a lot, the difference between job description and job title. So I mean, you can call somebody whatever you want to call them. The issue is, what is the job description? I don't think the job description has changed all that much between offensive coordinator and what Mike Groh did versus what Press Taylor's going to do. I do think the one difference is Mike was sort of the filter between Doug and all the rest of the offensive assistants. And from what I get, Rich Scangarello is going to be that. So they are splitting up the duties a little bit differently. But some of that has to do with they want to keep Press Taylor on a day-to-day basis with Carson Wentz because those two are so close. So they don't want to upset that side of the apple cart. But titles are titles, man. They're not meaningful. It's about what the job description is.
Yeah, John, I don't know if you're a fan of The Office, but it reminds me of when Kathy Bates, comes into the show, and Jim and Michael are both co-managers, and she says, yeah, it's two guys doing one job. I get it. So is that basically it, or are they forcing a trend?
Or are they the assistant to the regional manager?
Or are they Dwight?
And I am an Office fan, but I go back even further because people tell me all the time I'm old. But there was a Cheers episode that I bring up all the time where everybody wanted raises, and Rebecca Howe, Kirstie Alley, who was the manager of the bar, she didn't have money to give everybody raises. So to make them happy, she gave them titles, and everybody was very, very excited. It was a very funny episode of that series, and it kind of reminded me of last year when, Deuce Staley got assistant head coach. Well, what does that really mean? It's a title, but he doesn't have any power, and he was really passed over for Mike Rowe. Now he's been passed over again by Press Taylor, and you can argue it was passed over for Jeff Stoutland, but he's got that title. So what do these titles really mean? Not a lot. And this is Doug Peterson's offense. It was Doug Peterson's offense before. It was Doug Peterson's offense when Frank Reich was here. It's Doug Peterson's offense next year. And people got to get that through their heads.
Well, how is anybody going to get a head coaching job if they're not a coordinator, John?
Well, it's happened many times in the past, starting with Andy Reid. Andy Reid was never a coordinator, even way back in 1999 when the Eagles hired him. And I think it's interesting. You guys were talking about the trade deadline, the NBA, what the New York Knicks did today. You look at bringing an agent to run basketball operations. You look at John Lynch in the NFL going directly from the television booth to being a GM and his teams in the Super Bowl. You've seen guys go out of the booth in baseball to become managers. Leadership roles are about leadership. And if you're a leader, you can handle the position. And it has more to do, I always say, smart, really, really smart people. The key to them is they know what they don't know. And the dumb people, they don't know that. And that, to me, is what defines success in every walk of life, not just sports. But you can find leaders from many different avenues.
All right, John McMullen, of course, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. A couple other NFL things to get into. I saw last night the ESPN.com roundtable. One gentleman in that roundtable had Carson Wentz winning the MVP and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. Far-fetched, and his reasoning was, John, he believes in the Eagles front office and Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson. Is that a fair or foul prediction? Riddick? No, it was actually Dan Graziano.
Well, I don't think it's foul. I don't, I think it's meaningless.
Yeah, sure.
And that's not a shot at Dan. I mean, when you're asking somebody, well, who's going to win the Super Bowl next year? I mean, we haven't had free agency. We haven't had the draft. You haven't seen the personnel moves. So is Carson Wentz an MVP caliber player? We've already seen he is, if everything goes correctly. So I think people look at that, project, and certainly you would feel very comfortable saying the Chiefs are probably going to be pretty good again with Patrick Mahomes. So the Eagles are in that conversation. They'll be in that conversation because of the quarterback. But, I mean, there's a lot.
Well, do you have as much faith in the offseason, the front office, I should say, this offseason, as it seems Dan does?
No. No. Well, because I thought this team was a lot better than it was last year, coming into last year, not when we saw what it was. But in the off season, throughout the spring, the summer, I thought they were a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I thought they were in that mix of teams, probably 5 to 7 or 8 teams that you could say has a legitimate shot. And they were not. And the reason they weren't is because of personnel decisions. And not only the draft and free agency and how he's admitted his sentimentality, keep bringing back older players who ended up getting injured. But and then I add on what's happened so far this offseason and a little bit of dysfunction that you typically haven't seen in this era, which starts with Howie 2.0 and Doug Peterson. This is the first time we've seen a bit of a disconnect, not only with the coaching staff, but now you have the medical staff changes for the third consecutive year, and there's probably going to be at least a couple more tweaks there as well. No, I don't feel nearly as comfortable as I did last year, but that doesn't mean they can't turn it around either.
And real quick, while we're on that avenue there, what kind of flexibility monetarily are they able to do in the free agent market? I mean, is that something that they're going to have to get really creative about? Where are they in terms of money able to spend this offseason?
No, you know, I mean, that's been the strength. That no one can criticize Howie Roseman, or no one should criticize Howie Roseman when it comes to managing the salary cap. That's the strength of him as a general manager. It always has been. When they've been up against it, they no longer are. They were truly up against it the last 2 years. He always found ways to manipulate the numbers and the books to kick the can down the road, get into any negotiation for any player that he wanted, and now he's got more room. So that's never an issue with the Eagles. I don't think, to be honest, across the league, it's a little bit overrated. You have to make tough decisions generally with veteran players, but every team can create space under the salary cap if they want to. It's not a hard cap. It's not even a soft cap. It's a very soft cap, and it's easy to manipulate, and Howie's always been one of the best at doing it.
All right, let's look at some NFL stuff here with John McMullen. Todd Gurley, it looks like, could try to trade. Not a big surprise there, but this is seemingly like the trend, right? Gurley, they're going to try to trade him, and also it looks like David Johnson, two guys 2 years ago that looked like, number one building block pieces, look like could be finding new homes.
Yeah, well, it's the off season, so running back is no longer valued. From the off season through to December, the position is not valued, and then it's valued from about mid-December through the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And if you got a good running back, it really helps you. But nobody cares about the position. And by the way, I'm not saying that's wrong, because you just brought up an excellent point by saying at one point people would say Gurley was the best running back in the NFL. Johnson was in that conversation. Running backs are a dime a dozen in this league. They are, and they will continue to be, and people do not value that position.
That's for sure. David Johnson, Gurley. David Johnson got waived. Would he be a guy that Howie Roseman should get on the phone with? He at one point was a versatile guy, catches passes. I mean, the fantasy people out there loved him. He was a dual threat running back. Or does that not be the way that Howie would go?
No, I mean, Howie's not going to allocate significant assets. We just talked about the salary cap. I mean, Miles Sanders is the lead back for this team, and he's under his rookie deal as a second-round pick for 3 more years. And that's very, very cost-effective. Now, we also know, we've seen enough of Doug Peterson now to know they're going to go with a committee approach. But they're not going to spend a lot of money at that position. They just aren't. So anybody who's in the upper echelon, Gurley would certainly be in that conversation. And Johnson still would be. Still, again, the position isn't valued as a whole. So when you compare it to quarterback, edge rusher, corner, positions that people in this league do value, the numbers aren't as high. But you talk about that position, and the Eagles still have options. Jordan Howard coming off the injury, he's probably not going to have a big market. So who knows? Maybe they can re-sign him at a cost-effective deal. And you still have Corey Clement on his rookie deal coming back. And Boston's got to prove some things. I mean, he proved he should be part of the rotation last year. He wasn't a guy who he was a guy who got thrown in out of necessity. But when we talk about this practice squad guys, he played well, legitimately played well. So, I mean, there's some size limitations. He's never going to be a feature back, but as a third down back, if he can clean up some pass protection issues, he's legitimate as well, and he's cost effective. And that's how the Eagles will always tackle that position.
Yeah, and we know that they have a strong, feel for what Sproles did. I know a lot of people, it's easy just to say, hey, him and Sproles are, but he fills that kind of explosive third down, catch the ball, little wiggle out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, that's his role. The one difference would be that Darren was really good as a veteran player in pass protection, and he, as a very young player, wasn't asked to do it much. As all young running backs have that same issue. That part of it's got to improve greatly. But he showed the explosiveness he has, his ability in the screen game, and he'll be in the mix. There's no question about that.
All right, I want to get your opinion on this because I know how much you like Mitch Trubisky, right? Do you? No.
You're not going to put money on him.
Okay.
MVP,
Well, my question is,
his boy.
Could the Bears go down a similar road that the Titans did and bring in somebody a la Ryan Tannehill? And then Trubisky maybe gets the first, month of the season to prove his worth. And then you see someone like Andy Dalton or Marcus Mariota get signed by the Bears to be there for a failing Trubisky. So that's something to keep an eye on with the Bears this year.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're bringing somebody in. They're pushing him. I do think he will get the benefit of the doubt.
I do some research for this segment, John.
He obviously, Ryan Pace is married to him, and Ryan Pace has done that's the GM in Chicago, and he has done a lot of good things building up that roster, but he made a whopper of a mistake at the quarterback position.
You look at the guy who just won the Super Bowl was available.
Well, not only that, I mean, he traded up from 3 to 2 when he didn't even have to ensure that he got Mitch Trubisky. And not only did he pass on Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson as well. And by the way, to be fair, Mahomes, it wasn't in the conversation. People can use all the revisionist history they want.
True.
He wasn't even considered. Deshaun Watson was considered anywhere to go from 1 to probably all the way down to where he went, which I think was 12. But the point being is, while it might be unfair to not look at what Pace has done in his totality, that's just what it is. If you draft a quarterback and you trade up to ensure you get that quarterback at number 2 overall, and he's been an abject disaster, and then you put on top of it Mahomes and Deshaun Watson are superstars, it just looks bad. And so he will want to give him the benefit of the doubt and hope everything clicks at some point and hope he turns into a viable starter. It's just not going to happen. So, yeah, they're going to bring in a veteran guy, and it's probably going to happen just as you said it. 3 or 4 just terrible games, and they're going to turn the page.
Yeah.
And that's just how it's going to have to be. Very similar to Marcus Mariota.
All right.
Although Mariota's much better than Mitchell Trubisky.
Which would be interesting that Mariota got, swiped by Tannehill, and then Mariota could go in and do the same to somebody else. Now, what do you think Tannehill's going to? You think they're going to?
I don't think he's a starting level quarterback either. I think he's a high level backup. I think that sort of will be his lot in life the rest of the time in the NFL.
I think an XFL team should bring Mariota and Kelly together and just let us all see what would have happened.
I think
Chaos.
I think he would be a starter. I don't know if he could beat out P.J. Walker, the Houston Roughnecks, former Temple quarterback.
Well, that's some great XFL knowledge, yo.
Who?
God.
Former Temple's
right, finest.
Right. Of course.
There's a lot of Al's in the XFL.
Yeah, but yeah, that would be exciting. Actually, I would watch that.
I would like to see what happens there. Chip Kelly
and
is
Donnell Pumphrey in the backfield.
Yeah, Chip Kelly is the head coach of the Tampa Vipers with Marcus Mariota playing quarterback. That would be must-see TV. And on the other side, it's Johnny Manziel along with Hal Mummy, right? No, who was this coach in Texas? Oh, Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin, sorry.
Yeah, Johnny Manziel. I'm surprised Johnny hasn't resurfaced for the XFL because he tried to play in the CFL. Remember that lasted, I think, a month.
Didn't he?
He was in the AAF. No, he was playing in the AAF, and he was playing off the bench.
The CFL as well.
Oh, I thought it was CFL then AAF, but it was.
I think he was a backup in the CFL.
Well, he didn't show up for practice.
Well, he was the backup in the AAF, but he would come in like half the game, and I remember watching. He had a nice drive. Who did he play for? Birmingham? Did he play with Colin?
I don't know. I don't recall.
I don't know that.
All right.
The Birmingham Iron.
The influence of the XFL, John. What say you?
I do think it's going to be similar to the AAF as far as the product goes. I think if you like football, I think they're going about it far more legitimately this time. It'll be a good feeder league. It'll be a good system for guys on the cusp that aren't players that can kind of open some eyes and prove they deserve another chance. So if you like that and if you want to see football and starting this weekend and continue through the winter, it's good. Long-term viability, the American public has spoken many, many times over the past 100 years or so. They're not going to support minor leagues. And so it comes down, I've said it from the start, similar to the AAF, how long does a rich guy want to lose significant money for before he pulls the plug? And Vince has more money, far more money than the AAF, so he's got the ability to do it. He's funded it for 3 years. He's got the ability to play for 3 years. But there's no pot at the end of that rainbow. There's no revenue streams.
I feel like the XFL has a little bit of an arena football league feel to it. Just not like quality or...
They'd be lucky to make it as long as the arena league.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. I just mean pace of play. Like, I feel like they're trying to speed it up.
It's a 25-second clock, right?
Yeah, I think it's a shorter clock. They have the onside kick stuff. They came out with all the rules. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Yeah, and they're doing some interesting things with the extra point, 2-point play, 3-point play.
Like, it seems like they're trying to focus on entertainment a little bit more.
No, I don't think that. I think the original XFL did that. I mean,
they did that too much, I would say.
Yeah, they went full WWE. Then I guess it was WWF then, but they had The Rock on the field saying, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? They had the cheerleaders. They tried to titillate with the TNA. They did all that stuff. It's different this time. It's real football people running the league, trying to set up things properly. And I think you could argue the first version had a better chance of succeeding because you got to open up people's eyes and get casual fans. I don't think casual fans are interested in seeing, guys who would be 63rd players on NFL rosters at the end of practice squads. I don't think there is.
Are you better off getting a higher name valued player who's not as good? In other words, are you going to play Johnny Manziel? You're playing Johnny Manziel over Tyler Henneke because you know who Manziel is, and Henneke might be better.
I'd make an effort to watch Johnny Manziel this weekend.
Well, exactly. And you just brought up, Mike, Chip Kelly, and that, gimmicks would work to create an audience, but the product would suffer, and it would be so bad you'd lose that audience anyway. So you can't win, which is why I said I don't know why Vince is going to waste all his money on this. I mean, in essence, it's an ego thing. He didn't like the fact that he was labeled a failure the first time.
Yeah. Well, it's not good when the front page of NFL on ESPN.com is how Landry Jones became the face of the XFL.
You're up.
Yeah. What is Landry Jones is, I think, on the Dallas team because I think Stoops is the coach down there.
Yeah.
And he went to Oklahoma. So there's a lot of that. You're trying to get regional draws. I just don't. I don't see the avenue to success. I said the same thing with the AAF, and I hoped I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. I hope I'm wrong with the XFL, but I don't think I'm going to be wrong.
You rarely are. He's John McMullen at JF McMullen on Twitter, and he's, of course, kind enough to join us for Football at 4 on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Thank you, pal.
All right, thanks, guys.